Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to show you how and where to find the bootable or non-bootable partition in the MBF file on unpartitioned space. So let's start with the messier image which we were working previously. Once adding the item, let's expand the tree and then let's click unpartitioned space where you can find the master boot record file on the table pane. Well, it is vital to identify the partition spaces in this hex. But where to begin? How do you know which one is a partition 1, partition 2? Let's just say I can see there are 4 partitions. I'll mark them out for you. And I will explain how I know that. Okay, by marking the whole sector, I can see it's 512 bytes in the properties pane. You have to remember the end of the sector is always 55AA, as you can see it there. Immediately before that is the most useful part of the master boot record for us, which is called partition table, which I highlighted for you. Okay, so where to find the partition 1 in the partition table? It starts at the offset 1BE. How do I know that? Well, the whole partition table is always 64 bytes in size. As you mark the partition table and you could see it's 64 bytes. As you can see, there are like 16 bytes in every line, and as you may as well aware of, the bytes starts from 0 to 9 and then A to F. Okay, let me just count that for you to make it easy. I do have a screenshot which I will show you in a minute. Okay, there you go. Let's zoom that up. So this is offset 1B0. So I said it starts from offset 1 BE. So let's say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A, B, C, D, E. So that's how I know that is where the partition begins. So the first partition is 16 bytes in size from the offset 1BE. Let me just have the other screenshot open. There you go. So beginning from the offset 1BE, it's 16 bytes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. This is the first partition. And if you have been asked what is the offset of the second partition, do you know that? I'm pretty sure you do, because you can identify that the second partition begins where the first one ends. Therefore, it begins at the offset 1CE. Obviously, the third partition begins with 1DE. It starts from 1D0 and then it starts from here, 1DE. And you can see the last partition doesn't exist because it's all 0, which means it's empty. Make sure you remember the sector always ends with 55AA and it is always 64 bytes just before that. Now we know the partition table in the master boot record file, but the question is, how do I know if the partitions are bootable or non-bootable? It is not hard as you think. It is simple. The bootable partition will always begin with 80. As you can see, this partition begins with 0, 0, 0, and therefore it is non-bootable. What about partition 2? non-bootable as well. Partition 3, non-bootable. Partition 4 doesn't exist because it is all 0. Okay, now we have the understanding of the partition table, whether if the partition is bootable or not. Now, what is the system ID for each partition? For example, what is the system ID for the partition 1? And the system ID is always the 5th byte from the beginning of the partition. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is the system ID. Let me just get the screenshot so you can see it clearly. Yep. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th byte. The 0B is the system ID for the partition 1. For the partition 2, it would be 07. For partition 3, it would be 05, and so on. So far, we have found the master boot record. Then we found the partition table, which is here. And then we found the entries for the partition 1, 2, and 3. We found the offset for the partitions, and we also found the system ID for each partitions. Now, let's identify the sector value for each partitions. It always starts at the 8th byte of the partition and 4 bytes long. Make sure you count it from 0 at the beginning of a partition. Let me quickly show you how that works as well. Okay. So this is where our partition begins at the offset 1BE. So let's count it from here. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Remember, always starts at the 8th byte and 4 bytes long. Once you identify it, shade it, and then check the property pane. You identify, you shade the 4 bytes, and that's the property pane, and click the hex value interpreter, and then you could see the value. The sector value for the partition is 63. It is the same for the partition 2 and partition 3 as well. So that's for the partition 1. The sector value is 63 in Little Endian, and then if you go to partition 2, there you go, the value would be different, but that's the value of the partition 2, and the sector value for the partition 3 would be that. Just make sure you go to the hex value interpreter and make sure it's clicked on Little Endian to find the value. Okay, that's everything for this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed the content, and I will catch you up in the next one. Thanks for watching.